Kriga Bundalo. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome to the library. I'm coming to you from here today to do an impromptu video that's kind of being thrown up right in the middle of my video making hiatus. That's right. Some of you will have seen the video I made probably a little over a month ago now, where we went live and we talked about the fact that I have some major reading to do in the coming weeks because I have some big topics we need to dive into here on this channel. But I'm a really slow reader. So I said, we're going to put a stop on videos for a while. We'll catch up with you guys later. But Fan Expo 2024 in Canada just happened. Like, it literally just happened. And honestly, I got to tell you, I had a wicked cool time as a Conan-ophile at this particular show. So what we're going to do here today, we're going to walk through really the journey, a personal journey. Let's just do this personal journey meandering here of how I came to decide I'm going to go to Fan Expo Canada. Talk to it. Then we're going to talk through some really cool artist and talent interaction I had while I was at the show. I'm going to showcase some of the books that I took with me and some of the books that I got signed. And we'll talk really high level about, well, are these shows good for Conan-ophiles? Should you be considering going to these? Well, I got to tell you, and cat's out of the bag right here, I already told you I had a really good time. So I think you know what the conclusion's going to be when we get to there. All right? So for now, let's get into the whole journey. Let's get into who are the people I met. And then we'll wrap this whole thing up and I can get back to reading. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about, this is going to be the chapter that most people are going to jump in this video. I guarantee it. Because, you know, people aren't here to listen to me talk about my personal journey. Because that's getting a little too touchy-feely. What they're actually here to listen to is Tennessee fans tell me about the con. Well, you feel free to skip this one and get on into the con content. And by the way, for those of you who are wondering, if you're thinking this video is going to be one of those, hey, I'm walking around with a gimbal and this is all the cool cosplay stuff, that's not going to be here. You know why that's not here? Because I don't have any of the talent and or skill set necessary to actually produce that. In fact, I would argue, well, probably fairly strongly, I don't have any of the talent and or skill set to even produce this video. But we're here anyways and we're doing it anyway. So, what made me go to this thing? Well, I'll tell you. I went to the show earlier this year, back in March. And when I went to that, I said, okay, I've got a specific goal. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get some commissions done. I want to see if I can find some specific books in the bins. And I was really doing a shopping trip then. And the reason why I was doing a shopping trip then was because I always find that there's some little nuances in some books that you just can't seem to find that are really nil value books. But comic shops just generally don't have them. And when you're getting more into magazines, which is what I'm getting more into now because I'm finding more and more really quality Conan work in that genre and in that medium, I just can't find them anywhere. So I said, okay, let's go do this actual shopping trip. And that show for me, it was good. It was good, don't get me wrong. But it was somewhat overwhelming for me. I don't do shows well. And I know this. And it's because, quite frankly put, I'm too bloody old to take the time and walk around these things and really drag out the 2 or 3 day experience and really enjoy it. Because by the time about 3/4 of the way through day one goes, these old man knees, they're like, Tennessee fans, you are done. Like, go take up smoking, go sit on the dock and talk about the fish that got away. Just stop. And that's pretty much what they're telling me all the time. I choose to fight through it, but meh. So when I heard about the one coming up at the end of this year, i.e. the August show, which is Fan Expo Canada, which is the big one, which isn't just comics, it's a lot of things, I was thinking, do I go? Do I not? And honestly, I did not buy the tickets. I was not planning to go. Then a variety of things started to steamroll together. And this is what brought me to the decision to go. And I would encourage those of you who are out there who are considering going to cons, who are saying to yourself, listen to the story and listen to why I went. Because you might find yourself in a similar situation as me. All right? So first off, I'm waiting to hear the announcements about who's coming, just sort of in the back of my head, because I'm not really interested in attending, because I've really got 99% of the books that I'll ever want now. There's very little left for me to go find. Just a couple little nuances and nuggets out there that I got to pick up. But other than that, we're pretty much there. I see the announcement immediately come up, and honestly, this was brought to my attention by my friend Jason. Jason, thank you very much for doing this, that Jim's going to be there. Jim Zub, the current writer of Conan, and the guy who's the flagship writer for the whole Conan properties right now is going to be there. Now, I missed Jim at last year's con because I didn't go. So I'm already thinking, yeah, but I was planning on not going. I'm like, but Jim's going to be there. And I was like, man, you know, I could meet Jim elsewhere. I'm sure there's going to be some other event and I'll be able to go and tell him how much I appreciate his work. And do the typical thing where you actually say the positive things, and hopefully the artist will turn around and give you positive feedback as well, but how much they enjoy doing the work that you enjoy so much. So I'm thinking, maybe, and I'm kind of on the fence at this point in time. And I was like, Then Comic-Con, or Fan Expo Canada, starts to make more and more announcements about who is going to be attending. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was the announcement that Cary was going to be there. Now, for those of you who are watching this channel, or you're listening to the Tennessee Fats rambling about Robert E. Howard and Conan channel, you know who Cary is. We've discussed Cary on this channel, actually in detail. And I'll tell you, I'll put a link up to the video over here, because this is the one where we did the whole battle royale for Robert E. Howard, and we did the Rogues in the House story, and we did the comparison on that, because you'll remember Cary was the artist that did that for Dark Horse. Now, at the time, I said how impressed I was with Cary work. He really seminally laid down the feeling that was the Robert E. Howard story, and he did a great job in doing it. So Jim Zub's going to be there, but and there are a variety of stuff going on. But it was Cary was announced. That's when I went, and I did a thing. And this is where social media can be really, really good and really, really dangerous. In my case, it was really, really good. I posted a comment saying how much I was looking forward to seeing Cary at the show, and he was talking about the fact that he was going to be there on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, by the way. And he posted back. So suddenly there's dialogue going back and forth, and I'm saying, hey, you know what, would you mind doing a commission or a sketch for me in my Traveling Tennessee Fat sketchbook? And he's like, well, what are you looking to do? And I mentioned King Kull. And he's like, oh, I love Kull. I'd love to do a Kull one for you. And so we made arrangements, and literally, that was it. When I said, okay, I'm going to get a commission, and it's going to be done by Cary I'm like, he set aside time for me on day one of the show so that I can get I was like, okay, you know what? We are going to go to this. What does that lead to? Well, now you're committed. You're committed, you're a Conan-ophile, you're going to Fan Expo. Fan Expo is not everything for you. Let me tell you, if you like your anime and your manga, you're going to love a Fan Expo. If you're a Comic-Con guy, you're still going to love your Fan Expo. If you're a Conan-ophile, well, you got to start digging. This is where I started to do the digging. Guest list comes out, and you start going, well, hold on. And this is where the beauty of the CLZ app goes on your collection. For any of you out there who have the CLZ, I'm not getting paid at all for it. You know what? You CLZ guys should probably pay me for the actual positive things I say about you. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. They have a fantastic product. It's a wonderful service that's on your phone or on your computer, depending on which license you buy. And what you do is you put your entire collection into it. Now, that is the painful, painful step of doing this. You have to input your entire collection. Now, they make it easy. They let you barcode scan many things, so a lot of things can go in that way. You can pre-fill your input so that you, on general, can say, I'm around this grade for this particular run, ting, 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 and away they go. It works really well. But the other function that comes with it that's so amazing is the ability to, up at the top, type in random things that you're searching for. And you know what one of those things you can search for is? Talent that works on comics. That's right. You can actually type in, well, hold on, this guest is going to be there. I did that one afternoon, and I sat down with a pen and a paper, and that's how old I am. I sit down with pen and paper, and I did my little search, and every single time I was like, oh, I loved that book. I would love to meet that person. Put it on the list of potential things that I should take to the con. So at the end of the day, I ended up with a pile of books to go that looked a little something like this. That's the first image you're going to see in this one, where we start to go through the insanity that I had when I went to Fan Expo. I ended up with 2 short boxes, had to go out and buy a dolly, and take along a bag on top of that just to carry a case in it for magazines, for things that I wanted to get signed. A lot of it was non-Conan, because I am a comic guy as well. But the Conan stuff is what we're going to fixate on here today. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over and start telling you about some of the artists that I met on this little voyage that I went through at the show, some of the interactions I had with them, and I'll show you guys the books that I got signed. We'll just have them pop up on the side here, because you know what? Me holding up a book and just showing you, that's just dumb. All right, let's get into the artists. All right, so let's talk about artist number 1 here, or let's just caveat that and correct that right now. Creative talent and genius number 1 that we met. That was one of the first ones that I actually ran into at the show, and I actually beelined there on day 1 after I met with, well, we'll get to that in a little bit. And that was Gerry Duggan. Now, I had to look up the pronunciation of Duggan, okay? Because when I was there, I just kept calling him Gerry. I didn't call him Mr. Duggan or Duggan or anything like that. So I'm assuming I'm naming that correctly and that I'm actually calling. You guys can just below if I'm massacring that. But that's what I think you pronounce this one. Gerry Duggan. Now, this is an interesting one here because honestly, the name didn't jump out at me at first. It was, again, because I used that CLZ app and tick, 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 tick. And by the way, this is me typing on the CLZ app on my phone because I close one like this and I squint. Now look with the other one. Anyway, we got there and I typed it in. And lo and behold, what do I find? I find that he wrote one of the series that I loved. And I know it's controversial. I know a lot of people who are Conan-ophiles who are into canon did not like this, but I'm going to put a link up here for those of you who are interested. And that's right, that is the Savage Avengers review where I took the trade paperbacks and read them front to back. Now that to me, and I get it, I understand why Conan-ophiles, hardcore Conan-ophiles, do not like that series. I, on the other hand, liked that series. And I do consider myself a hardcore Conan-ophile, but the reason why I liked that series was because it was a wonderful, fanciful story for me. It was a wonderful chance to see Conan interacting with characters that you would never have seen him interact with otherwise. Now, I know that's going to get me in hot water with Conan-ophiles. I know that because people are going to say, no, Conan does not exist in the modern era. Conan does not hang around with Frank Castle or Wolverine or all these other people. But it's just a fun story. It really is. If you actually take the this can't happen and park it, you end up with this wonderful dialogue piece, what's going on with Conan and all the characters around him, and the absurdity that Conan is viewed as when he's doing all those things. Now, I'm going to start showing some of the images because I took the first, I think, 5 issues of Savage Avengers with me and annual number 1. And I'll show you guys those. I brought them with me and they'll be popping up on the side to side here. And when I sat down with Gerry, not sat down, I was standing, he was sitting. And I said, Gerry, first question I'm going to ask you is, do you really like The Greatest American Hero? And he's sitting and he looks up at me, he's like, I said, did you watch all of it? And he's like, yeah, I think I watched all of it. Why? And I said, because in Savage Avengers, and this is where, you know, you're just being that complete comic nerd guy. Savage Avengers, there was that thing with the Juggernaut, you know, with the believe it or not, I'm walking on air. And for those of you who wonder what I'm talking about, you can click on that video I already gave you the link to. Because I got to tell you, that was a moment where for me, and again, this is why the name didn't ring or jump to me. It's because I didn't really pay attention to who the writer was in that story when I was doing my review. I just said, this writer clearly is of my generation, was exposed to the things that I was exposed to in my youth. Because here's the Juggernaut singing the theme song to The Greatest American Hero. And I know that theme song. And beyond that, the writing was done at such a pace that when you were singing that theme song in your head while you're reading the story, and then they cut away to something else and they come back, it still carries on the same tune. That, in my mind, was writing genius. And I had to tell Gerry that. And he said, well, I enjoyed doing that. Another thing that he really enjoyed, the stuff that he brought in with that, was how they brought in the Conan-guy character. And how that character became so large within the story, and how they dealt with it. And I said, yeah, and I'm not going to spoil it. No spoilers here. It is a very creative way that they do it. And honestly, this is another one of the things that I really liked about the Savage Avengers story, is it showed character growth for Conan that's not in any canonical material. And I don't mean that there's no character growth for Conan in canonical material. There's a lot of character growth for Conan in canonical material. I'm talking about the fact that this takes it in a different way. And it's really well done. So for those of you who are curious, just get out there and check that out. The other thing that Gerry wrote, though, that I brought with me, though, was the Savage Sword of Conan Volume 2 series that Marvel brought up. He didn't write all of it, but he wrote a bunch of it. And I'll share those with you guys as well. And they'll be popping up on the sides here. I took a bunch of issues of that and had him sign those while we were talking Greatest American Hero and about Conan-guy. The interesting aspect of this was I did this, said thank you very much to Gerry and left. And I came back the next day with something totally different that I'd forgotten to get him signed the day before. And he remembered me and said, oh, did you bring me more Savage Sword of Conan? And I was like, ooh, I'm not even wearing the same hat I wore yesterday. You reckon? Okay, that's very, very cool. And it was honestly a very positive experience to him. Now, I'll tell you, he did have a book that's there that he is publishing right now. It's called Falling in Love on the Way to Hell. I believe I got that title right. And he opened it up and gave me a chance to thumb through it. And in fact, I'll put up the selfie that we took of him over here, where we took a photo together on day 1. And he mentioned that if you don't buy the books, there's a trade paperback coming out so that it'll be cheaper for you to actually read through the whole story. The story actually looks really interesting from the issue 1 that I had a chance to go through. So I would encourage any of you, if you're interested in something like that, and again, I'm paraphrasing, I haven't read it. From what I saw, it's similar to, in setting, because I'm not going to spoil where it takes place. But in setting, it's similar to almost what you're seeing in the King Conan series that ended with Marvel that Jason Aaron was writing, which I also really enjoyed, and I'll put a link to that video up over here in case you want to actually hear my thoughts on that. I know I got myself in a little hot water on that one because I went on a bit of a tirade, but either way, I enjoyed the series overall. It was a cool one, and I enjoyed that. Anyways, that was my Gerry Duggan experience, Duggan experience, and it was really cool. Now, if I didn't and look him up, I would have completely missed that. And I consider myself a Conan-ophile. What am I doing? All right, now this is an artist, and I can say artist here because it actually is an artist. Now this is going to be one that you Conan-ophiles, when I say the name, you're going to be like, what? Because it's recent, okay? It is recent. It's not old school, but it was a fairly cool interaction. And that was with Stanley Artgerm Lau. I'm going to give you a second for the name to sink in here, because many of you are going to know him, many are not, because he tends to do art that looks something like this. He's really good at doing art that looks like that. And it's not too often where this modern artist is getting a chance to actually do Conan material, but he did an amazing piece of work on a variant cover for the new Titan run of Conan, and I believe it was issue number 1. So I took some books in, because I was having a stack that day, of a variety of things. And I was putting them in front of him, and I wasn't expecting this to be a real Conan interaction. And I will say this right now. Stanley Lau and his wife, who was helping him facilitate his table when he's at the show, are the nicest and politest people I think I've met in a long time. They took the time during the lineup to actually truncate it to make sure that somebody who had mobility issues could get in the line and actually get up there without having to suffer, well, with the mobility issues that they were having, through this long, convoluted corral to get up to them. It was really a phenomenal thing to see. And the other thing that was really cool about it, and this is actually makes me proud to be Canadian. I'm going to say this part right now. You have this long corral of a lineup. You're in Toronto. The majority of the people in that line are Canadian. I'm Canadian. I'm proud to be Canadian. And when they put this individual in behind, and they say, and suddenly Stanley's wife stands up and says, "I'm sorry, everybody, we're doing this," and there was not a single peep of, "Hey, you're jumping." There was nobody pushing back on this. There was complete understanding and compassion. And as a crowd, and a member of that crowd, honestly, that hit home. That was a cool move. And I give Stanley and his wife mad props for pulling that move and having the stones to do that. That was pretty cool. Anyway, so I had my aside, Canadian aside. Yeah, that's what we just did there. We're going to put that aside, all right? Here's what happened. I went in with a stack of books like this, because I do have a lot of Stanley Artgerm Lau books. And when I had them all out of the bags, and you have them all there for him to sign, he's going through them. He gets to the one. And you're thinking, okay, which one of these, because many times when you put a stack in front of people, they'll pull one aside, they'll go, "Wow, that's what," I'm thinking, which one is going to be that wow experience here? Guess what it was? It was the Titan book. It literally was. It was, "Whoa, look at this." And he looked at it, his wife looked at it, and went, "Whoa, look at this." And of course I had and I'll show you that over there. And I also have the sketch variant of that, which I'll put up over here. And I had that one, which is the very next book. And there was a level of excitement when he saw the first one. And there was a heightened level of excitement when he saw the second one. So as a Conan-ophile, I'm like, oh, he gets it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. That was really cool. And that, again, would never have thought of the Conan-ophile connection there, because this is Stanley Artgerm Lau. This is not something where you would think, okay, well, this is going to be classic sword and sorcery. And honestly, I think he should probably be doing a little more sword and sorcery, because we need to draw him in. Everybody, get up there and over to Titan and say, guys, let's get some more Stanley Artgerm Lau on our covers, because I think it works well, and I think he enjoys doing it. Pretty cool. All right, let's talk Steve McNiven. Now, Steve McNiven, this is one that caught me off guard. And it caught me off, well, why would I say this caught me off? Okay, hold on. Let's take a moment here. This is what I love about these videos. It's interactive. You guys don't know it, but we're actually having a conversation right now. Steve McNiven, I took one book with, okay? Now, there's reason. Now, Steve McNiven, by the way, in case any of you are curious, is a freaking Marvel legend. He has done so much cool stuff. But I already had that picture I showed you guys earlier of 2 short boxes full of books to take. So I was like, okay, we gotta take one. So which one are we gonna take? So I took this. Now that's King Size Conan number 1 from 2020. Now I have already done a video review of that, and I'll put a link to it up over here. What's really funny about that book is it's actually the first time Roberto Del Torre actually did work on Conan. which is very, very cool. Well, work on Conan in a comic. Let's put it that way. Let's caveat that. But it's a really cool collection of some very neat stories. And the first story in that is written by the legendary Roy Thomas. Now, Roy Thomas, he freaking knows Conan, which is just amazing. So I put the book in front of Steve McNiven. So I say, Steve, would you mind signing this for me? And very personal, very nice guy. He looks and he goes, oh, king-size Conan. Yeah, no problem. And then this is when things happen. Now, granted, I found out that he was on this book because, once again, CLZ app, Steve McNiven. I was like, there's some Conan right there. We're going to take that. He then opens up and starts telling me about how he jumped right on this when he had the opportunity because he was going to be able to do work with the legendary Roy Thomas. Not just the legendary Roy Thomas, but the legendary Roy Thomas on telling a story of a very early point in Conan's career, right after the sack of Venarium. Now that story is fairly material. Again, I already gave you a link to that one earlier. It's worth reading. It's actually really, really good. If you don't have a copy of King Size Conan #1 from 2020, make sure you go get it. But, you know, you're talking to a comic artist and he's telling you about it and how he really enjoyed this and he jumped right on it. He was very excited to do it. He then went even further. Because you've already impressed me at this point in time, Steve. You've got my attention. He then takes it one step further and says, you know, what would be really cool is actually owning a copy of Weird Tales where that first Conan story was published. Now, at this point in time, the little Conan-ophile in the back of my head is going, like his brain has exploded. He's gotten off the chair, literally walked out of the room, down the stairs, and he's left the building. He is so floored by what has just happened because Steve McNiven not only has proven that he actually knows Conan, but he's a Conan-ophile. He has actually just said it. And this is not me dragging it out. This is him freely giving that information. Absolutely a flooring conversation. It really surprised me, made me very, very happy. So I'm going to show you that book again. It's just really, really cool. Having his signature on it, having that story behind it was one of those Conan-ophile moments where it's like, this was a win. All right, it's time to get into the Cary Nord story. Now, Cary Nord, you guys, if you watch that first chapter, which I'm going to argue is probably the most jumped chapter in this entire video, where you have the rambling story of Tennessee Fats and how he went down this meandering. See, it's not just meandering, it's rambling, so reambling. As I got down to that point of how did we get here? Well, really it was Cary Nord that was the tipping point. And I gotta tell you, my interaction with him was really, really cool. Here's how the whole thing came about. He posted online on Instagram saying, hey, you know, I'm going to be here. And I posted back saying, wow, it's gonna be really awesome. Hopefully I'll be able to get a commission from you. He responded back. And that says something right there. When an artist of his caliber responds back, you're like, ooh, okay, I got your attention. And you know what? You instantaneously have my attention. You've got 100% of it, in fact. Let's talk. And when I told him, you know, the Tennessee Fast Traveling Sketchbook, you know, it's a small book about yay big. And what I do in it is I'm putting together some of the works that really mean the most to me by the artists that mean the most to me. And I got to tell you, that book is really a fun project. I've been working on it now for many, many years. And the interactions I've had with some people who have worked within that book have been phenomenal. It's really a cool project. I'm very happy I do it. But when we were chatting about it, he said, well, what would you like in it? And I said, well, maybe something King Kull-like, you know, Kull with maybe Zenobia or something like that. And his response was, I love King Kull. Now, this is the guy who I've already chatted about. And again, I'm going to put a link up over here to that Robert E. Howard Battle Royale because he did such a good job on the Rogues in the House story. And oh, by the way, here's the images of Rogues in the House that I took with me. I'll show those to you guys that he signed while I was there. Very, very cool. I also had him sign off on the Savage Sword of Conan #3, the new Titan book, and we'll showcase that here while we're going through this as well. Cary was really cool though. I managed to meet up with him right at the beginning of the show. I left him with the Tennessee Fast Traveling Sketchbook, and I said, you just do your thing. You take as much time as you need. This is the project for this show, so go. Do your thing. I made sure that I paid him, and I left him with the book, and I actually got the signatures from him, and then he went meandering off and did my thing, and then rambled off and basically got lost for the day, which is exactly what I did. I literally got lost in the show for a day, which was, it's a long story. Anyways, that happened. The whole thing happens, and I have all these other cool experiences, and at the end of the day, I'm thinking to myself, man, am I beat? I gotta get out of here. And lo and behold, he has texted me saying, hey, just letting you know, unfortunately, I didn't get her done today. I'll take it with me tonight when he's closing up his booth. Well, I got that message probably about 45 minutes after he sent it. So again, no problem, Cary. Thanks, I appreciate it. Have a great night. Next day, I show up, just touch base with him first thing in the morning, and just as I'm walking by to say hi. And later on that day is when he lays the book on me. Now, I have shared that image on my Reddit feed. It's sitting in the Reddit, which we have as a link. It's a link in the About Us on this channel. And to get access to that, because it is just for subscribers of this channel, just subscribe to the channel. It's pretty simple. Then once you get yourself into the Reddit and you got your account, just send me a message and I'll get you into it. It's easy enough to do. There's some rules in there. I actually wrote them. I'm actually pretty... I'm not going to talk about how proud I am myself. Anyways, it's listed there. If you want to see it, it's there. But it was a really cool experience. We talked about Conan. We talked about Cull. We talked about the sorts of things that he's worked on. Really a personal guy. And I did do the process of actually sticking the rogues in the house in front of him. And I was somewhat gushing, saying, you know, like, this was a really good job. And, you know, you're trying not to be like, this is really cool, I love it. But you're trying to be positive and professional about this. And he was really cool about the whole experience. And he was really laid back. And I think that's pretty awesome. There was actually a painting battle that occurred on Friday where I think it was called Comics Explosion or something like that. Unfortunately, I couldn't go. I was conflicted out. Not conflicted out. I had a scheduling conflict and could not attend. So the result of that is I couldn't be there, and which is a shame because there was going to be Mike Ruth, and Mike Ruth, as you guys know, it's like I'm somewhat of a fan of his work. We've got a couple commissions from him. He was going to be painting, and he did actually end up painting, sitting right beside Cary Nord through that whole thing. That would have been so like mind-blowingly epic to watch. I'm actually really pissed I missed it because at the end of it, it was a silent auction. You could buy the works that they were painting. Really cool guy and a really cool experience. And as a Conan-ophile, that's one of those check boxes like, yeah, you get to see Cary Nord? Yeah, you go see Cary Nord. All right, so let's get into the name that's come up here a couple times so far. And this is the one where, quite frankly, but if you're a Conan-ophile, this would have been probably the drawing name for you at the show. And deservedly so. And that's Jim Zub. Now, what I'm going to do here, because I got a couple things signed by Jim. I'll just start showing you guys the books that I brought with me up to the side here as we go through this one. You can see the books that he did. And I also had him sign off on a couple of the Savage Sword magazines while I was there. Jim was a really cool individual. Now, I've already told this story in the live where I did just sort of an unprompted, here's what happened to me at Fan Expo. Unfortunately, the weather was, well, not the weather. I was quite under the weather lung-wise, and I was having a capacity issue with breathing, so we just couldn't take the time to shoot a video. We're all better now, woo! So we're here shooting this. But Jim was incredibly cool, and the story I'm going to tell you here is the one I already told there. But if you heard it twice, sorry, it's just so cool. I'm pretty damn happy with it. The funny part was I'm walking down the aisle, and I'll show you guys that image of me, of the two short boxes and the dolly that I was taking with. I literally felt like the 80-year-old guy with, you know, a scarf wrapped around his head and a giant overcoat with my little cart going off to get my groceries and my bag of potatoes. It was one of those things where you're slowly doing the death march through the show. I felt so effing old. It was ridiculous. Anyways, I'm looking down the aisle, and I look and I see, and I'm thinking, I know this guy. I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly certain that's Jim Zub. And as I'm sitting here, and again, old man wheels. Click, 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 click. He looks at me, makes eye contact, goes, Tennessee Fats. And I was like, huh. And he goes, you know, I didn't recognize you without the whole woo. And I was like, yeah. And, you know, we have a great conversation about it. And he's heading back to his booth. So I follow him along to his booth. And we had this great conversation about Conan and Titan and everything that's going on and what brought him to it. And there's a lot there. I'm not going to steal his thunder here. If you really want to, actually, you know what? If you really want to see it, there was a Conan panel that happened on Friday where he talked a lot about that very thing of what brought him to Conan, what brought him into this process of being here. And I know my friend actually recorded that, and he's got it on his channel. You get yourself out there and you can find it. It's there. It's there, and you can watch the whole thing. But it was a very cool experience, and I honestly really, really enjoyed that one. It was really cool getting a chance to meet him, but also just the Conan lore that comes with him. Because I gotta tell you, I'm not a guy that just sits here thinking about Conan in absentia of any sort of inputs. There's a lot of input coming in, and with the way that the whole Conan and Black Stone is coming along, and notice I didn't use the word the Conan and Black Stone is coming along, I've got some ideas, and I've got some great feedback and great interaction with you guys, the fans out there, where we've been talking about, well, actually, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And I was able to say to Jim, hey, Jim, listen, I'm not going to think any less of you if you don't answer this question, but is it this? And his answer was, That's a great guess. It was just one of those things where it's like, not that he was very affirming I was right. It was just he was saying, yes, great guess. But he's there. And it was amazing because he doesn't just know Conan, he's a D&D guy. So when I'm saying, you know, you're going for a dungeon crawl or you're going on this quest or you're doing an Italian job, he gets the entire idea. And quite frankly, but that means a lot to me. And that was really a seminal moment for me at this show because you're now sitting in front of the guy that is the flagship head writing Conan right now. And you can ask him anything you want. Now, he doesn't have to answer anything because, you know, if there's confidential stuff, he's off it. But either way, you're like, dude, what about, and what about, and it's funny because I even said, hey, listen, you know, I got this piece of art that's coming over here and it's a thing. And he's like, oh, which one did you get? And I said, oh, I got this one. He's like, oh, with the thing. I was like, yeah, with the thing. He's like, it was a thing. It was a moment. We connected right there. It was cool. Let's just put it that way. That's all that really matters here. And honestly, probably one of the cooler experiences I had talking to a Conan person, because that was really just like, besides Cary Norda's identifying as the Conan-guy and Gerry Duggan being the Conan-guy, here is Jim Zub, who's the guy who's writing the whole flagship right now. That's fairly material, and it was really cool. That was it. That was the big one. If there's something you're going for, you're going to meet Jim, and then you're going to go to the Conan panel, and you're going to hear the story, and you're going to actually just soak it all in, and you're going to have that moment. And that, to me, as a Conan-ophile, was very, very cool. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up, and let's get it done. Okay, so here's the gist, guys. Here's what we wanted to do today. Well, there's a couple things I wanted to do. One, I wanted to tell you guys these incredible stories of the people that I ran into and the interactions I had for people who have worked on Robert E. Howard and Conan IP. This was a really cool thing as a Conan-ophile to do. Now, granted, I had a lot of other really cool experiences at Fan Expo Canada 2024. I had a lot of other experiences at Fan Expo 2024 in Canada that, quite frankly, left me scratching my head and going, how the hell did that just happen? There were some things that were just, there were other things that were just, and literally the Conan stuff was the whole way through. You can have a lot of fun at a con as a Conan-ophile. Do not think that just because you're a Conan-ophile, and I'm not saying just because, as it's diminutive, I'm saying that's what you're interested in, that you're not going to find something that you connect with at a Comic-Con. I did a little bit of research on this one, and granted, there were two fairly large names there that are going to make you go, yeah, I'm going to go to that. But there were a lot of others that went with that. In fact, there's a bunch of others that I didn't even discuss on this video that tie directly into the Ablaze books. And I never get to meet Ablaze artists. That was one of those moments because I ended up with a bunch of those. And I'm quite, you know what, at the end of this video, I'll put a couple of those up for you guys just so you can see some of the ones that I did get signed and the people I met when I was there as well. It was just super cool. So if you're out there, you see a con coming up, you see an artist list, take the time. Take the time to do that little tippity down there on the interwebs. You're going to find yourself having a good time when you're actually sitting in front of these guys. Because most people who worked on Conan, they didn't just do it as a tradesperson. They did it as a labor of love. Well, everybody, that's our video for this week. And I got to tell you, this was a fun one for me to do. The experience I had getting the stories that I've told you today was truly epic. It was just one of those things where I'm at the con and literally I'm just having banging experiences the whole way through. I had a great time meeting the artists and the writers and everybody that was there, and the Fan Expo staff were actually really, really good. If that's the one piece of feedback I can give to Fan Expo Canada, you're doing a great job attracting talent. Keep up the good work. It was a really enjoyable time, and it gave me the opportunity to do this with you. Now, I know this video is actually right in the middle of a video hiatus, but quite frankly I didn't want to make this one last. I wanted to get it out to you guys before this. It's like this is fresh. Get it out there, Tennessee Fats. So this is what we did. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Now, bear in mind, next video is going to be quite some time in coming. We still have a lot of reading to do to get through that point where we have to go. I'll be sharing some information with you guys on Reddit or on Instagram. If you are interested in following there, feel free. If you like these videos and you want to subscribe so you make sure you're getting the notification when the next one comes up, it's probably what you want to do because it's going to be a while. And by the way, my friend Jason told me there's apparently some sort of screwy thing you got to do in your subscriptions now to make sure you're notified when the next video comes up. Do that if you actually want to get the notification, because otherwise you ain't going to get it, apparently. And you probably want to get that if you enjoyed this video. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next one. Have yourself a great day. It is Easter egg time. It is time for that fun little thing where you and I have a chat and we talk about something. In this particular video, what are we talking about? Well, the majority of the video we've done up until now has all been about Fan Expo and some of the really cool experiences that I had at Fan Expo talking to comic artists. Well, this Easter egg that we're sticking at the end here, it's going to be no different. I did not want to cover this as part of the overall video at the front, but I did talk to this a little bit on the live where I just did a brief synopsis of some of the interactions I had with comic artists, but I really wanted to delve into this a little bit more because this one was so cool that I went back on Sunday, the last day of the show, when I was walking by this particular individual again, and I had to thank him again for the really cool interaction. So here's where I'm coming from. Invariably, when there's a Fan Expo or a Comic-Con, and I'm going to say Fan Expo in particular here. Well, yeah, I'm going to say Fan Expo in particular here, where invariably I've bought the tickets in advance, and I've been very excited to go in and see certain artists and certain writers. And 1 to 2 days before the show happens, the people that I wanted to go see that were in my mind the star billings suddenly have canceled, and there's no notice and there's nothing. There's just a grayed out picture sitting on the Fan Expo website, and you're supposed to go, okay, now what? This happened to me actually with Hamilton Comic-Con earlier this year as well. Really gung-ho and excited about one particular artist that was going to be there, and through no fault of their own, wasn't able to make it. But we only found out at the very last hour. And at that point in time, you'd ask yourself, would I have bought the tickets? So for me, yes, all the Conan people that I researched were phenomenally important. They were really the people that I was going to go see. But again, you're sitting there on your CLZ app, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here because, again, I use that thing so much in preparation for this show. And one of the star billings that's going to be on this one for you Conan, or you comic guys out there, is Mark Silvestri. Mark Silvestri is going to be there. So I'm sitting here leading up to this point in time thinking, okay, here we go. We're on the Monday. Show starts on Thursday. Mark Silvestri is very important for me to see because I'm really cranked to actually sit there and talk to him about the 90s and what was happening and see his reaction when I put my books in front of him. Guarantee he's going to cancel at the last minute. Tuesday comes around, no cancellation. Wednesday comes around, no cancellation. At this point in time, I'm thinking, wow, they're really leaving this to the last minute. Like, I've got my little stack of books, don't get me wrong. But if he ain't showing up, like, really, the day before? Are you kidding me? Thursday morning, he's still on there. My mind is starting to blow at this point in time. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to meet all these Conan people. That's great. And we've already discussed the fantastic interactions I had with the guys of that. But I'm going to meet Mark Silvestri. Like, that's big. That's big for me as young Tennessee Fats and as old Tennessee Fats. The little Tennessee Fats inside me is losing his freaking mind because the Image books that came out of the 90s and were, well, they were pretty pivotal to me. And I'll tell you, Cyberforce, very important to me. Very important to me enough that when Cyberforce did its 30th anniversary edition on Kickstarter, I was there backing that project. And I have a copy of that. I'll put an image up over here for you guys. And that's pretty cool. And on the front of that, came with the Kickstarter as a frontispiece that was attached to the inside of the hardcover. That's signed by Mark Silvestri. And I got to tell you, that was one of those ones where I was like, oh, having that was a moment for me. And that's just a Kickstarter. So now I'm like, okay, I'm actually going to meet the man. And A, I'm going to be able to talk about Cyberforce. B, maybe we'll talk a little bit of Darkness. C, maybe we'll talk about Codename Strikeforce a bit. Codename Strikeforce, this is one that I was absolutely fascinated with. I love this story. I thought it was just great. And the team I thought was really cool. The guy with the 3 arms, that's pretty darned cool. And I got to tell you, I don't ever get anybody to discuss that with because nobody else read it and nobody else was really into it. And it was sort of a short-lived series, so not really that much to discuss anyways. So I'm thinking, okay, great. So I get a whole stack of books out. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through each book and I'm going to talk about his reaction to these because I was standing in the line for about a half an hour to meet him. And it's not through any fault of his. He was not scheduled to start signing for about a half an hour from when I got in the line. And I was the second person in the line. The lineup was fairly short, and that was on, I'm going to say that was on the Friday. Yeah, I'm going to say that was on the Friday. It was a fairly short line at that particular time, and it's interesting because I was in the line, and there was another fellow behind me that was back from Hackensack, New Jersey. And I thought I had a lot of books with my 2 short boxes. This guy had about, I'm going to say 4 to 5 short boxes worth of books, and he was pulling out some books in his collection because he and I were chatting. He was a very fascinating fella, and honestly, really nice guy. I think his name was Carl. And I got to tell you, he was pulling out books that had already had 5 or 6 signatures on that one book. And he was going to get Mark to sign it as well. And I was like, oh, dude, you are hardcore. I am impressed. I met this other guy named Dave that works at BMV in Toronto. A really cool individual. He and I were chatting at another booth about HeroCon. When I was standing in the line, I was talking about HeroCon again, and he overheard me talking. He said, are you still talking about HeroCon? Which I've never been to, by the way. I've just heard at this show how great it was. And I was talking to other people around me that were all telling me, yeah, HeroCon was great. And he came along and said, you still? It was really cool. So we're having this really cool sort of interaction in the line, the comic nerds. That's what I'm going to call us. And we're having a good chat. And then Mark, because he's doing a piece, and we're all watching him do the piece at the table while we're chatting, which is fantastic to watch somebody actually create that you respect that much. And when they decided to open it up for signings, Mark was there saying, everyone, I apologize for this taking so long. And everybody in the line were all looking at it like, are you nuts? Like, you weren't scheduled to start for half an hour. You started in a half an hour. And the really interesting part about this was, not an hour before that, I was standing in front of Frank Thierry's booth, and I was talking to Frank, and suddenly I felt this looming presence behind me. And lo and behold, I turn around, and Mark Silvestri's standing right behind me. And I look at him, and I was like, and this is one of those moments where your full mouth can easily get you killed at any given point in time. And I looked at him, and I said, holy blank. you are tall in real life. And the fascinating part about it is I'm tall online too. I was like, oh, hardy har har. And then he went wandering off into this thing. But and again, I'm talking to Frank Thierry at this point in time, talking comics, and I'm sort of very excited about that. And I've just had my first run-in with Mark standing right behind me. And then when I get in the line and he's there and he's apologizing, I'm like, man, this guy is really down to earth. I did not expect, honestly, you never know what to expect. When somebody's had a level of success this guy has had in comics, maybe you're leaning more towards the fact that you're not expecting that. But again, apologized right after that. Guy in front of me had a couple of books. I made arrangements with his handler to pay for what I was getting signed. And I brought out my books. Now, what I'm going to do is I show you guys the books that I brought, because the interactions with him were so neat while these were getting taken out. It was just one of those, very cool. So we'll start off with, because I'll tell you, the first one that we did was an ash can. I'm going to put the ash can up over here. Now, this is Ballistic Studios Swimsuit Special. Now, Ballistic Studios, again, we're talking about really small-time press, Image Comics, low print runs, not something that everybody would have seen. And when I got this out, because right behind this was a second ash can, I'm going to show you guys in a minute, Mark was looking at it going, what? Like, where did you even get this? It was one of those moments where you're like, ooh, okay, I think we're going to have some success here. And he was showing it to his management team as they were there, and everybody was looking at it going, what? And of course, we weren't signing anything yet. We were just going through the actual books and looking at what I brought. And that one kind of made me go, okay, that's cool. But the comment was, I don't have this. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And that's what made me immediately break out the second ash can, which was with me. And I'm going to show you that image up over here now. And that was for the Codename Strike Force. And the Codename Strike Force, like, he was excited about seeing the ballistic swimsuit. Yeah, but again, that's sort of a cheesecake sort of book. But when you actually break out a comic book, like, it actually led to Codename Strike Force, suddenly that sinks in more. And there was more of this, like, he was excited with the fact that he was holding this book and seeing it, which I thought was really, really, really cool. And then we got into the heavier stuff. Now, this is where more of the reaction started to happen. And I'll tell you, because he went through those and we signed those and we set them to the side, and that was very cool. And then we broke out some of the really fun stuff. And this is stuff I don't think he sees every day. And the first one was this. I'll put the image up over here for you guys, because me holding up these books does no good. All you get is a glare and a shine. It just means nothing. It looks hokey. So listen, here's the bottom line. I get this book out and I put it down in front of him, and he looks at this and he's like, what? Because this is going all the way back to 1982. All right? This is early Mark Silvestri work. And what's fascinating about this one is he got the book and he opened it up and he made a comment. And it was one of those comments where I was like, oh God, where do we go with this conversation? He said, this is the difference between a comic professional and a comic amateur. And I'm thinking, ooh, what did I do? Am I in trouble? Have I done something really weird? And then he says, no to me, because I hadn't said it. I was still frozen at that point in time, trying to figure out whether I'd done something stupid. He says, no, if you look at the front cover on this one, he says, when I got this from Marvel and I was doing this is the one where he fights this haunted owl in the forest. And it was supposed to be this giant owl. And he says, so when I got this, based on the script, I drew an owl. And you guys can go online and you can look up the inner image of this as well. He actually opened it up and went straight to the pages. Yeah, here's my owl right here. And it was the most fascinating thing to me because it's a normal sized owl. He says, I clearly, and I'm paraphrasing, I didn't get the memo. Because Walt Simonson had to do the cover on this, because they didn't trust me to do covers at this point in time. So he says, so they called Walt and they said, Walt, we're in a bind, can you do this? And he says, and I've just shown you guys the image. He says, Walt clearly got it. When they said giant owl, they meant giant owl. So he says, so the difference here is that I, being a young comic amateur, drew owl. Walt Simonson draws owl. The big delta there. And it was interesting because he was chatting with me about this one because we hadn't gone further down the stack yet. And he says, this was really one of those things. And it's like, and it was a learning point. And he says, at this point in time, and he says, I think it was this book where he made the comment, and he says, and the other thing is, I drew too many pages on this. So they actually had to pay an editor to go in and cut up my panels and put them together so that they would fit in the number of pages that was necessary. And he made an off-the-cuff comment. He was like, he was worried about his job stability at that point in time, which I thought was just fascinating. The next one that we put right underneath that one, I'm going to show you guys the image over here, is this. It's Conan the King number 20. Again, very early Mark Teixeira work. There's not Mark Teixeira. Mark Silvestri work on this one. And what was fascinating about this one, and he opened it up, because again, this is one where he's like, what? Like, you've got this? And I was like, yeah, I've got this. And we popped it open, and the front page on this one has him drawing a picture of King Conan sitting on a crown. And it's Silvestri after, I believe it's Severin? Yeah, I think it's after Severin, which I thought was just a fascinating thing. And he looked at it and he was thumbing through it. And he's like, these are amazing. It's so cool to see these because these were my original works. And he was talking about the front of this one. I think this one's a Kaluta cover, I believe. And anyways, and again, you can see the image up to the side there, but it was cool seeing his reaction to that. The funniest one, though, the most interesting one that he had a reaction of, I can't believe you brought, was this. I'm going to put the image over here. Master of Kung Fu number 119. He did guest penciling in this. Again, you're going back to 1982 at this point in time. I think that King Conan was 1984. I don't see any date on it anywhere on this thing, but I'm pretty sure it was 1980. Oh, yeah, 1984. I got it written on the back. But this one, going back to 1982, and he's like, yeah, this was early. This was early penciling, and he was fascinated. He's like, you got some old Marvel stuff in here for me, and it was really cool seeing him in that way, being interested with what I brought. So first, I bring ash cans that he doesn't have, and that he hasn't seen for a long time, if you've seen them at all. And now I've got back to old Marvel. This is when I start to break out, okay, well, now we get into the stack of the regular stuff. So the next thing I brought out was this one, Cyberforce number 12. This one, I said, I brought this one particularly because this is the one that's so heavy metal to me. And he signed this one, no questions asked. It's just such a cool image, which was very cool. This one is the next one I brought out, which was one that I wanted to make sure, because I do have a large stack of Tomb Raider downstairs. And this is Tomb Raider number 1, but this is the Another Universe exclusive, which was one of his covers. Again, no work on the inside, but one of his covers. Very cool piece. And he's looking at this going, yes, I remember this one. And it was interesting that this is another one that he remembered. Now, this is when we start to get in back once again to the really cool experiences again. Because the next one I brought out was this one. And this is The Darkness number 1. Now, at this point in time, he's looking at it, and I said, no, I've already had this. Well, I actually didn't have this signed. This actually came signed, and it actually has a certificate of authenticity. It's a Dynamic Forces authenticity between Garth Ennis and Bat that signed this already. And it's funny because he looked at it and he says, typically what Bat does is he likes to sign actually over top of the logo or the icon for the publishing house. He says, on this one, he didn't do it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And he wasn't going too far into the Darkness conversation as of yet. Then I got this one, which is the next one, which is The Darkness number 1, but this is a different variant cover by him, which he looked at and he's like, oh, that's okay. That's pretty darn cool. So on these he signed, and he was talking about these, and he says, well, you know, if you like the Darkness is my favorite character, and he says, and you know, we just relaunched Witchblade. So that's coming out now, but he says, but The Darkness is coming out next, so keep an eye out for that. And I said, that's great. I said, and you guys just did your Kickstarter as well for Cyberforce. That was last year. And he's like, yeah. And I said, I'm pretty cool. I'm fond of that because, you know, I've been supporting your work for a fair amount of time. I'm totally keeping my eyes out for The Darkness because that's a very cool character. I do enjoy that. I did not bring my copy of Witchblade number 10. I wonder if I should have brought that as well. Oh, well, hindsight's 2020. But this is where then I broke out this to prove my point. This is a exclusive. I'm going to put the image up over here. I don't need to hold the book up. And this is the Cyberforce 30th anniversary exclusive that came with the Kickstarter. And this is where I put my money where my mouth is, because I was able to say, yes, I did do this. And here's my variants. I brought them. Can you sign them? And this is where he was like, oh. And this is where there's a real moment of appreciation. And this is what leads to the last point I want to make. And we'll get to that in a second. Where he's like, yeah, you fans are actually really important to me. And we'll get to that in a moment. Last book, though, was this one, which I'm going to put up over here. Top Cow Secrets, the Winter Lingerie Edition. I'll just put the image up. I don't need to hold it up. When I brought that one out, it's interesting because he's like, oh, and you brought this? And I said, well, everybody has to have a cheesecake book. So lo and behold, and I said, and this will go back into the smut box at home, which we all had a good chuckle about and we all had a good laugh about it. But at the end of this whole thing, we circled back because we wanted, again, they took selfies with Mark and I before he signed the books. But at the end, they said, did you want to do selfies again? And I said, that would be great if you don't mind. Why not? And he said, well, which books do you want to hold up? And Mark grabbed this one. No questions asked. He was like, yeah, that's me. And I said, no, I'll hold up the smut book on this one. And so we got the selfie, and I'll put the photo up at the end of this old Ramble here on the end of the Easter egg here. And that was the one that I held up. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. And at the end of it, he made a really cool comment. And I'm going to paraphrase here because, again, I don't want to put words in somebody else's mouth if I'm quoting them incorrectly. And it was to the effect that he appreciated it and he thanked me because it's because of fans like myself and the other people in the line, everybody standing around, that they're able to continue doing what they're doing and that they're able to continue to live their lifestyle and do what they love, which is creating this work. And I guess the fact that I brought in work that goes all the way back to 1982 up until now, like now with this, it's like, oh, I'm literally not blowing smoke here. This is what it is. And I thanked him so much for that experience, and thanked him for that whole interaction and the appreciation of the fan base, which I thought was so cool. And I did not expect this from Mark Silvestri at all. This floored me. It was just one of those moments like, such a cool fella to meet in real life. That is just so cool. Very neat whole thing. And as I say, I was there on the Sunday just doing a walk around with my family, and I walked past and he was sketching, and I stopped and I said, listen, I know you're sketching, you're not signing right now. And they came over, I said, no, we're not signing anything, and don't ask. And I said, no, I'm not asking you to sign anything. I just wanted to let you know it was here on Friday. I had a really cool interaction with you guys. And honestly, you made me really appreciate comic artists as people and understand that you guys appreciate us as fans as well. It was a really cool experience, and I just wanted to thank you again for it. And they were cool with that. It was a really neat thing. So you can meet really cool people. People always say, don't meet your heroes. And that's kind of a dangerous statement. It really is. You can meet your heroes. You can meet people that you're fond of. Just be prepared. Because I can tell you, there was another individual I met at this show that I've been waiting for a long time to meet. And I already heard enough anecdotal stories to know that when I meet this individual that I should be expecting not necessarily the best experience ever. Granted, I met them. I did have a conversation with them. And I did get them to sign some of my books. But I will tell you this much. The hype was real. That's all I'm going to say about that. The hype was definitely real. Anyways, everybody, that's our Easter egg for today. If you have a chance to meet Mark Silvestri out there, and Mark, I know you're absolutely not watching this video because I am nowhere near important enough for you to be watching my video, but if you ever do have this forwarded to you for any particular reason, thank you once again. And for the rest of you out there, if you do have a chance to meet him, yeah, by all means, stand in the line. Take the time to meet him. I'll tell you, I saw pictures that he posted on Instagram. I think it was on Saturday. I wasn't there Saturday. And you saw the line wrapping around behind his booth and going all the way down this long corridor. And that line was nowhere near that long when I was there on Friday. But I will say that, hold on, let me get some coffee here. This is a very expensive cup of coffee. The reason why is because this is the second cup of coffee I had to make. The first one made a hell of a mess, and it wrote off one of my shirts. Yeah, this has been an interesting afternoon. Anyways, if you do have a chance to meet him, stand in that line. It's a long line on the Saturday, I know, but the line that I was in was not that long. And even when I was in a long line meeting Stanley Archer and Lau at this particular show, that line moved very quickly. So I know it can look daunting. No, put in the time. It's worth the investment. Definitely worth the investment. Mark, if I ever get a chance to meet you again, I will bring more exciting books going all the way back to the 80s, and we can have another chat. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next video.